Hi everyone, thanks for joining. Just going to give people a couple of minutes to join. People a few more minutes to join. We'll do one more minute and then get started, and people can just join after that when they come on. Okay, I'm just going to get started, and if anyone else joins, they can just jump in where we were. So, hello, nice to meet you all. Thanks for joining. I'm Una, and I've been working with SharePoint and Microsoft for over 9 years now. And in my role at Leaf, I help teams get the most out of their digital tools, whether that's organising documents, streamlining processes, or just making everyday collaboration easier. So I know just how frustrating it can be when files go missing or get duplicates, or you end up with endless versions. And that's why I love SharePoint and how it can simplify things to help avoid these issues. So just a bit on what we're going to cover today. So we'll start with a quick introduction to what SharePoint actually is, and then talk about file storage and how to avoid duplication. We'll look at sharing and access for files, then how to organize your documents so they make sense, and how to safely collaborate, whether that be internal or external. And then finally, I'll give you a couple of simple takeaways that you can try straight away to help you with SharePoint from the get-go. So what exactly is SharePoint? SharePoint is basically a smart home to store your files. So instead of having files scattered in emails or desktops or in different folders or drives, everything's in one place and everyone works on the same version. So there's no more duplicates and no not being able to find your file because you can't remember where you saved it. So yeah, it's easy to find the files that you need and control who can see and edit them. Files can be stored in a structured, meaningful way that's bespoke to your company or your department. So SharePoint will adapt to you rather than you having to adapt to SharePoint. So we're going to have a look at the difference here between a messy SharePoint and a well-structured one, and then chat about how you can get to that nice, neat, structured one. So this is what I see quite a lot when working with companies. So there's maybe too many sites, too many libraries with meaningless names like general. Folders are maybe buried 6 foot deep or all in one site, or you've got folders with one single file in them. Bit meaningless and hard to find the file that you need then. Also, files call things like report version 5 final in 2 in brackets .doc, so it's quite long and there's maybe like 5 or 6 different versions of that file, so it's hard to find the one that you actually need. And then broken permissions and inheritance can be a big issue across SharePoint, where you don't know who has access to files, or you need to share something but people won't be able to access it because of permissions. So another thing is all the documents being on one single site and having that broken inheritance to try and do permissions within SharePoint. So that all equates to a messy, unorganized, hard to manage SharePoint, and probably why people don't like SharePoint. So it doesn't have to be that way. Ideally, your SharePoint will have fewer clearly named sites, so it's easier for people to maintain and see what where they're able to go. Your libraries will be organized by purpose, and folders don't go on forever and ever. You've got a shallow folder structure to keep everything easy to navigate. Clear, consistent naming conventions that make sense when you're looking at a file rather than having to open them and figure out what that file is. Permissions that are set by groups, so everyone has the right permission automatically. You don't have to grant individual permission every time you want to share a file. And once that structure is in place, your search functionality is going to be a lot better within SharePoint. You're going to be able to find the files that you need quicker and save a lot of faffing about looking for files. So I'm not going to ask you to raise hands or name anyone here, but some of this might sound familiar to you. So if you've spent ages searching for the right file, you're not sure who has access to the file, or you have had to recreate the file just because you couldn't find it in the first place. So these frustrations I see it quite a lot in SharePoint when working with people. And SharePoint is a way to resolve that and hopefully get away from these frustrations. So I like to think of SharePoint as like a physical office. So you've got a site, which would be the room in your building. And that could be your department's office or project meeting room. The door can be open so that anyone can get into it and get the files within that room, or it can be locked so that only people with the right permission or key can get into the room. And then inside that room, you've got your filing cabinets, which are your document libraries. And each cabinet is for a different purpose. So for example, you've got a filing cabinet with policies or projects or templates. Again, these can be unlocked so that everyone in the room has access to them, or locked so that only people with the right permission can open the filing cabinet and get those files. You might not need every, if you've got multiple filing cabinets, you might not need access to every one, so you can have a key for one but not the other. So within the filing cabinets then, you'll have drawers, which are your folders. And this keeps your documents grouped together in a meaningful way. So for example, the HR's cabinet, one drawer might be for policies, one drawer might be for training, etc. And then within those folders, you've got your actual files. So that's your Word documents, your PDFs, etc. So hopefully that helps kind of visualize how SharePoint looks. So just an example here. You can see the top level, I would usually refer to it as a hub, and usually everyone has access to that, and the content of it. So if I just laser point, you've got a contacts list and a document library. So everyone's going to have access to those features within that top level. And then you've also got 3 sites underneath that. So you've got your IG site, your IT site, and your HR site. So, for example, you might have access to IG and HR, but not necessarily IT. And then within that, you've also got your lists and your document libraries and maybe some other subsites within the HR site, for example. So your permission can go quite deep, but you would have access to the higher level. So, for example, if you need access to this one, you would need access to HR. So it kind of keeps everything neat and organized and structured, and you're looking at the information that you need rather than having everything on one site, and it's just a lot of clutter that you don't need. So one of the simplest ways to find your files then is using views and being able to filter these views and sort them. So for example, you can sort your all your documents by the name or by the created date or by the author. And equally, you can apply filters as well. So you can filter by a specific author or filter by a specific date that the file was created. And that'll just help you get to the file that you need. It's going to save you a lot of time. Instead of scrolling and scrolling through different folders, you can use the filters and views. So one of the biggest frustrations with files in SharePoint is duplication and having multiple versions floating around in different emails on different drives stored on your desktop. And SharePoint resolves this issue by giving you a central place to store all your documents. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways, a couple of features in SharePoint that make this easier, and you can reduce clutter, avoid confusion, and always know that you're working on the right file. First up, version history. So we know the frustration of endless folders and files named like final, really final, use this one .doc. So SharePoint's going to resolve that by having version history. Basically, every change is tracked, so you always know you're working on the same document every time. The changes are tracked, and if you ever want to go back, you can revert to a previous version. So there's no more guessing if you're in the right one, or if someone else is using a different version of the file, you're all using the same one. Another feature would be good naming conventions. So this can make files much more easier to manage and see clearly what a file is for. So key conventions that I would recommend would be to keep the name short but clear. And if you're adding dates, stick to a consistent, year, month, day, month, year, whatever works for you. Just so everything stays the same and in order. Avoid using vague names like doc1 or final doc. It's not going to mean anything to you if you go back to it in a week or a year or 2-3 years. Try and make it a bit more descriptive, but not an essay to read. Use dashes or underscores instead of spaces if needed. Sometimes spaces can be a bit funny in SharePoint, so I'd always recommend to use an underscore or a dash and not use a space if you can. And then agree on a naming convention within your team. So I'm not going to say this is the exact way you have to use it. You can come up with the way that works for you and makes sense for your team. So for example, we have named this file SharePoint webinar underscore 2025-09-11 because that's today's date and we're doing a SharePoint webinar. So we know exactly what it's for. If we go back in 2 years' time, we want to look at what that file is. We know what it contains. So co-authoring in SharePoint is probably my favorite feature in SharePoint. It just means that multiple people can work on the same file at the same time, and you can see those changes in real time. So there's no more emailing different versions, different copies backwards and forwards, and trying to make sure you merge all the changes at the end. You're working on one file and everyone's changes are going into that file. So you always know you've got the latest version, and it's going to make your teamwork and collaboration so much more smooth and less frustrating. So take a wee drink. So once you've got your files on SharePoint, who has access to them? Sharing can be tricky. Figuring out who needs access, what level of access they need. Do they just need to read it or edit it? SharePoint makes that simpler. So you can set the permission at the folder or the file level. So if they just need access to a file, you just give them access to the file. If they need access to every file within a folder, you give them access to the whole folder, and it automatically inherits that permission down. Sharing also helps with the external sharing of sensitive files. So for example, if you were to attach a copy of a file in an email, and that email, maybe you sent it to the wrong person, or it gets sent on to someone it's not intended for, they've got a copy of the file, and that's the end of it. Whereas if you send a link, you can remove that link and not share with the people anymore. And if you share with someone, they have to check. So SharePoint's going to ask them to sign in and make sure that they are the actual person that you've intended for that file to be shared with. If you're doing it internally, you already signed in, so you kind of skip over that bit, but that would be for external. So your files aren't going to end up in the wrong hands. They're always going to be secure. And then again, because you're sharing a link to the file, you're all working on the same file and you're all on the most up-to-date version. So there's no outdated versions floating about on emails and stuff. So SharePoint is much more than just a place to store your files. It's essentially the backbone of Teams, OneDrive, and the Power Platform. So you can access your document library straight from Teams or Outlook. So everything's in the one place. You don't have to jump about between different locations. You can automate approval processes, notifications, and other processes with Power Automate. You can track tasks and projects using lists, and even build simple apps with Power Apps as well. So dashboards and other integrations also help surface important information so that your team can work smart and not hard, which is probably ideal for people. And because everything's cloud-based, you can access your files on any device, anywhere. So if you do want to go on holiday and do some work, you can do. I probably wouldn't, but the option's there. And using SharePoint alongside these tools really helps you get more value out of your Microsoft 365 and makes your day-to-day work a lot smoother. So just a couple of takeaways that you can take with you and try straight away. So first thing, if you want to upload a document to SharePoint instead of to your desktop or a local folder, make a couple of changes and then view that version history after making those changes. You just be able to see what you've done. And then if you want, you can revert to a previous version as well, just to try that out. Next would be share a link to your file rather than attaching it to an email. And you can choose whether that person can view or edit the file as well. Next, you can upload a document to Teams or open a document in Teams or SharePoint and co-author with another colleague in real time and be able to see those changes happening right in front of you. And then if you want to explore another integration, so for an example, you can make a simple approval process using Power Automate within SharePoint. So you can try doing those if you want. And then if you want any further training, with a couple of courses online, so we've got the foundation level, and that's going to cover your basics. So this kind of level of basic understanding of SharePoint and the essential skills that you'll need to work confidently and productively within SharePoint from day one. And then we've also got an advanced level, which is more advanced than what we've covered today, and it's going to teach you different tools and techniques to help manage your data, streamline processes, and improve your business outcomes. So no matter your experience, we'll have a training course for you if you want any further. So there's a QR code if you want to scan it, or I'm sure Rachel or Lucy in the marketing team will have a sign up available for you after this. But I've flown through that really quick, but if you have any questions about what we've covered today, I'll be happy to answer them for you. You can either put them in the chat if you want, or I'm not sure if you're able to speak, but how much is the foundation course? I'm not sure. Rachel or Lucy will be able to. Rachel is coming off mute there.
Yes, I was just going to say that we'll send more information about the courses after this event, to include costs there too.
So how does Power Automate work? Power Automate is like workflows in the background. So you can put in a trigger to say, for example, when a file is modified, check with Una before it's published. So it's a really, really powerful tool, and there's so much you can do with it. So I'd really recommend playing with that if you have an interest in it, and obviously reach out to us if you have an idea of something that you want, or if you want to know a bit more about it. Definitely more than happy to chat to you about Power Automate. But it's really, really useful tool. I think within SharePoint, if you go to a file, there is a button for flow, and it'll help you make a approval process as well. It's quite a basic one, but something maybe to play about with. The link for the QR code doesn't work to get the cost and further information. Rachel can address that after. If starting from fresh, can Leaf help recognize files at the beginning when starting to use SharePoint, or reorganize files at the beginning? Yeah. If you haven't got a SharePoint at the minute, we'll have a chat with you about what you want, what maybe you don't know that you could have. Have a look at your files, maybe chat about some recommendations that we would have for you, and we'll work together. We're not going to come in and say, this is how you have to use SharePoint, change your whole process, this is what you're doing now. We'll work with you and get that set up in a way that works for you guys. So definitely reach out to me after, or drop you a message and maybe get that conversation going. How does file editing for multiple users work when files are synced to File Explorer? It should work the same way. So if you open a file and someone else opens it, you'll see a little dot in the top right-hand corner with that person's logo or their initials. Sorry, not logo, their profile picture or their initials, and then you're assigned a color. And then within the file, you'll see maybe if it's Excel, the cell will be outlined in that person's color to let you know that they're editing, and you're not able to overwrite each other. So, sorry. If someone's working on a particular cell in Excel, you're not also able to go into that cell. You have to wait for them to move out of it. So you work together, but not competing with each other. Again, play about with it and have a look how it works for you. Will the PowerPoint slides be shared with the course attendees? Yes, I believe they are. It'll be put up on LinkedIn after this, I'm pretty sure. Can you describe how Microsoft Teams and its channels relate to the SharePoint platform? So basically, SharePoint is the backbone of Teams. So you'll have a team, and within a team, you'll have different channels. Each channel then has a files section, and that's basically a document library within SharePoint. So if you're in that file section, you have an option to view on SharePoint. So if you want to maybe have a look at that as well, you can see if you click view on SharePoint, it's going to take you to SharePoint on the browser and show you that document library there. So basically a team is a site, and that would be your room, and then your channels would be your document libraries. So it's all the same place. Whatever you see on Teams is also in SharePoint, and then if you have it synced as well, it's also on your File Explorer. So it's all the one place. Can you scan from photocopiers directly into SharePoint? Yes, I think it depends on your printer and photocopier. But we have done this for other clients as well. So I'll reach out to you afterwards maybe and get that sorted. Is there an office calendar or appointments that can be used within SharePoint? So there's a few different tools that we could use for that. You could essentially just make a SharePoint list that is viewed as a calendar. I don't think it relates to your Outlook calendars, but we can definitely use Power Automate to get that link created. So again, another use of Power Automate in the background there for linking your Outlook to your SharePoint as well. Then if you're using an office calendar, I would advise putting it on a SharePoint hub, and everyone would have access to that calendar, which would look quite nice. Checking if I've missed any other questions. If I've missed your question, or if you have a question that you don't want to answer or ask on the chat, feel free to reach out and I'll answer directly with you. Thanks for coming, everyone. Really appreciate it. Good turnout. Have a good day. Cheerio.